I love interesting characters, but I love character designs even more. I've seen many of my favorite artists turn random objects into amazing characters and compelling stories. So much so that I'm gonna challenge myself to do the same. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and checking out my Instagram. Now, let's begin. I've seen lots of examples using images of animals or interesting objects to draw their illustrations. Since I'm very new to this, I decided to make this as simple as possible by only looking for an object. I ended up going with a clock. It may be a little simple, but trust me, this clock ended up being a massive mistake. I've seen a lot of artists dive deep into the story elements of the object or images that they have selected, but I want to make it fun and super simple for me. The more I do this, the more experimental I'll be when selecting references. I wanted to go with the clock mainly because of the design and the color. I remember my mom getting this clock when I was younger, so it can be loud enough for me to hear so I don't miss the bus in the morning. I'm not that old, but I can say that back then, using your own phone as a clock wasn't the norm. Personal phones existed, it just didn't have an alarm feature like most phones do nowadays. But this clock was quickly replaced with the Barbie clock. I grew up with a lot of Barbies growing up. Maybe that's why I have an obsession with opening Pop Marts. Anyway, as you notice, the clock consisted of circles, lots of round, straight lines representing the body of the clock and the bells? I don't know what this is called, but basically that's what makes the sound that causes you tinnitus. That's all you need to know. There are also straight lines and rectangles from the short hand and the long hand, along with the legs that hold the clock up. This will be the visual language for my character, consisting many circles and rectangles. Clocks are also known to be loud and annoying, specifically this type of clock. So some of the ideas I had at first was a construction worker. You know, the kind of construction workers who work on like very loud drills. I don't know what it's really called, but it's one of those things that just go so freaking loud, mainly on concrete. That's what I was first considering, but remembered when construction workers had yellow jackets? That's when I realized it didn't really fit the clock color scheme. I also noticed that I was drawing the mustache similar to the clock from the Beauty and the Beast, and it didn't really cohesively speak to anything, and it just felt like it was all over the place. So I quickly scrapped that idea. Okay, so what about a student? Have you ever been stressed about running late for class or missing a deadline in your assignment? That's what I was thinking when I saw the clock. Running out of time. I also wanted to incorporate the roundness of the clock design. So I came up with an oversized jacket, almost like a puff jacket, to represent the body of the clock. I wanted to have her personality to be anxious as well, and treating the headphones to represent the bell. On the clock, the bells is used to make the sound come out, whereas with the student, you use it as kind of like a noise-canceling headphones. Like you see a lot of people kind of like studying in cafes, something similar to that. Almost like she needs to block the noise to focus on her work. But I realized the concept of the noise-canceling headphones contradicting the function of the clock. The point of the clock is to make noise, so why would I make noise-canceling headphones? After considering this, I ended up scrapping the idea altogether. At this point, I was just wasting time coming up with poor ideas. Wait. Wasting time. Or better yet, killing time. This one thought took my idea to a whole other level. Keeping the visual language of the circles and the triangles, instead think of it as a warrior. Similar to Lady Bren from Game of Thrones. I've been seeing a lot of clips of the Game of Thrones on my YouTube and Instagram feed. Lots of clips being feed to me, and I think that's just because of the new season of the House of the Dragon. Anyway, I wanted to draw her almost like a soldier in an army that have years of decades of experience, kind of like they're representing the numbers that are on the clock. I use short and long hand of the clock to represent the swords, and have the third short be the red hand that ticks the seconds. I focus less on the use of the bells of the clock and have that as part of the hair. I tried a lot of different type of hairstyles, trying to figure out what it works, and sometimes I was messing around with on the hair and the shoulders, because sometimes you see shoulders have like big shoulder pads, so I was messing around with the circle shapes on there as well. I even tried messing around with the hairstyle. I didn't have to be exactly buns, but you could just be more poofy to symbolize the roundness of the bells on her hair. And maybe have hairpins to put up the bangs a little bit back, kind of to represent the I don't know what the part is, but it's the metal part that connects the two bells together. Maybe something like that. I also wanted to add the numbers to the design as well. At first, I was thinking of literally drawing the numbers on her hands, almost like marking the amount of enemies that she has. I ended up liking this a lot, changing the idea from a soldier to an assassin. There was a point of having numbers forming the red sword, where the red represents the hand seconds of the clock. In this case, the number could represent the amount of powerful enemies she defeated, making her sword stronger in a way. At this point, I think I managed to settle into a design. I noticed it a lot of clock-like characters, they tend to be older or wiser. I wanted to play against that idea to make it kind of like a child of time, where she's young, but she's wise. With the color palette, I didn't do anything massively different. I decided to stick with the color palette that was given to me. I used the green, white, and the gold as the base, and used red from the second hand as the accent color. At this point, I decided to use it as blood in a way. Alright, now that I have the character down, the color scheme, all the clock aspects, and solidified the visual language, now how do I put it all together in one illustration that can read all the information clearly and in an interesting way? So I came up with a pose that's like very simple, no backgrounds or anything, mainly because this is more focused on the character design. That and backgrounds take me forever to do. If you guys want to see me do a background, we're going to be here all day. So I decided to focus on more highlighting the sword and kind of like the blood, and emphasize more of the mysterious way that she is, using a lot of shadows, kind of like the mystery of time, and using the blood as the accent to really highlight how killer she is. Again, I really wanted to emphasize the quote, killing time. I also incorporate a lot of sharp objects on her outfit as well, like kind of the sharp on the crown, and also the sharpness of like other swords. I tried to implement the other two swords for the long hand, but I felt like it wasn't as important as it needs to be. I feel like the one sword with the red accent pretty much speaks for itself, and the roundness of her dress, her shoulder pads, and even her hair, I think that encapsulate everything that needs to be said. I tried to have the two long hands that represents the hour and the minute. I try to have it as like swords on the side, kind of like on her hip, but I didn't like the way that it kind of just affects her silhouette, that I ended up dropping it all together and I only focused on the one sword. Looking at it now, I kind of wish I went back to the magical element of the sword, of how it's like being summoned with numbers. I feel like that would be a pretty much cooler effect. But with all of that being said and done, here's what I came up with. Dare I say, she feels very like Princess of Time, or the Queen of Time Death, or like, I don't know, death just seconds away. She pretty much encapsulates the perfect example of like death and time, and I wanted to really highlight how deadly she is. Yeah, well, that's what I came up with. I'm not gonna lie, this was a really good like brain challenge. Kind of forced me to use my one functioning brain cell to come up with like pretty cool character designs. So maybe I'll do more in the future. This was honestly really fun. Maybe in the future I do like a full illustration that's a little bit more than just one character. But with that being said, let me know what you think. Thank you for watching this far, and if you want to see more of my work, check out my Instagram and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye.